Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss about freedom in your NCRT of civics class 11th. So we are going to discuss this chapter into detail. So before we start this chapter, let's discuss what actually freedom means. So freedom means absence of any kind of restrictions. Okay, friends. So we all like freedom. Okay, you all must be wanting freedom to choose your own career. You all wanting to become civil servant or diplomat, or you wanted to become an entrepreneur. So we all like freedom. Okay, so let's start discussing this chapter into detail. So but absolute freedom is not at all in interest of society. So there should be some kind of restriction or constraint in society. Okay, so freedom means different for you can say at individual level it means something else, at community level it is something else, and for freedom also means different for different political philosophers has given different meaning of freedom. Okay, so let's discuss about it. Freedom means absence of external control. It allows people to make their own choices. Okay, and it is a core of democratic life. So in a democracy, it's important that people should have a right to freedom. So the true freedom exists when with responsibility. So there cannot be complete freedom in society. There has to be some kind of restriction, some kind of limitation, because individuals and human being is selfish by nature, and if there is complete freedom, then there is complete chaos in society. Okay, so there has to be some kind of restriction, some kind of limitation. So there has to be balance of both. Okay, freedom is power to do what we ought to do. Okay, so this is the quote. So friends, now let's discuss about some some leaders. Let's discuss about some leaders who fought for freedom in their own way. Okay, so let's first discuss about uh, Nelson Mandela. So as you all know, Nelson Mandela was first African black president. Okay, so what kind of freedom did he fought for? He fought for freedom against discrimination. So what kind of discrimination was there in South Africa? In South Africa, there was a racial discrimination. So what happened in after independence in South Africa, that whites were in major although whites were in minority, they were around 10%, but they holded in all the dominant positions, whether it is in legislature or all economic life. In all economic spheres of life, there was dominance of whites, and he was against this. Nelson Mandela was completely against this. And not only this, people of blacks, they were denied of their basic rights. They were not allowed to enter into public spaces. So the rights were the rights were was for blacks were very limited. So he fought a long battle. Okay, Nelson Mandela fought a long battle for that, and he was imprisoned for almost more than 27 years. And finally, in the year 1992, he became first black president of South Africa. Okay, so we have discussed about Nelson Mandela. Okay, so what kind of freedom did he fought for? He fought for uh, freedom from racial discrimination, which his people suffered in his own country. They were native people there, but they were treated as second class citizens in their own country in South Africa. So he fought for freedom from racial discrimination. Okay, students, so now let's discuss about another political leader, that is Aung San Suu Kyi. So who was Aung San Suu Kyi? She was political civil rights activist, or you can say political leader of Myanmar. So as you all know, Myanmar is our neighbor, and you know what happened. Myanmar is also a third world country. Okay, Myanmar is a third world country. What do we mean by third world country? India is also a third world country. Okay, by third world country we mean that there were few countries which emerged as independent after Second World War. India was also amongst them. Okay, so many countries after 1945 attained independence. So Myanmar was also one of them. But what happened that in 1962, in 1962, Myanmar fell under military rule, and there were many South Asian and Asian countries which, starting when they began, when they attained independence, they were democratic, but later some kind of popular leader emerged, and they fell into some kind of dictatorial rule within their country. Another example is Pakistan. Okay, that is also a kind of dictatorial and military leadership was there, and still it is there. Okay, in Pakistan also. So we are discussing about Myanmar. So there was, what kind of freedom did this leader Aung San Suu Kyi? What kind of freedom did she fought for? She fought for freedom from fear, freedom. She wanted people of her own country should have free will, should have right to freedom, right to freely express themselves. Because what happened, since 1962 there was a military rule, and whenever there is a military rule, the rights of people are very limited. There is very limited freedom. Okay, there is very limited freedom in countries which are ruled under completely military leadership. Okay, so she fought for that. She wanted freedom from fear for her own citizens, and for this she was awarded Nobel Peace Prize in the year 1992. Okay, Myanmar in fought her she fought for the rights of her people in a very peaceful manner. Okay, she was awarded Nobel Peace Prize, and she also formed one political party which was National Democratic League. I'm writing it over here, National Democratic League. Okay, and in recently in 2015 she was elected as de facto ruler of Myanmar. Okay, so we have discussed about Nelson Mandela. We have discussed about Aung San Suu Kyi. So they have fought, a kind of freedom in their own way. They have their own demands for their own people. So these are the two examples we have discussed. Now let's discuss about Mahatma Gandhi. Now, what kind of idea of freedom which Mahatma Gandhi believes in comes from his work, that is Hind Swaraj. In his work Hind Swaraj, he coined a word, Swaraj. Okay, so his his freedom does not mean complete free will in society. His freedom has a much more broader meaning. Okay, kind of freedom he wanted his people should be free from poverty, free from illiteracy, free from inequality and untouchability. So he wanted that there should be, you can say, freedom. He wanted emancipation of his old people. Okay, he wanted social reform. So that kind of Swaraj that Gandhi believed in. Okay, so he was not in favor of complete free will. He was more in favor of there should be a disciplined. He wanted his countrymen to be much more disciplined also. Okay, so this was Gandhi's idea of freedom. Okay, so now let's discuss about constraint. What does a constraint mean? It means limitations on freedom. Okay, there cannot be any society. There cannot be any society where there can be complete freedom. Okay, if there is complete freedom, then there is completely chaos in society. Okay, for instance, in our Indian constitution also, from under article 19, under article from article 19, sorry, under article 19, article 22, we have right to freedom. We have freedom. Okay, so our constitution also guarantees right to freedom, but they are not absolute. There are some reasonable restrictions which are imposed on freedom of individuals or citizens living in a country. Okay, so there is no complete freedom. Okay, so let's take example of traffic. So if we all obey, if we don't obey traffic lights just because we have a freedom to move anywhere in our countries, then what will happen? There will be complete chaos in streets. Nobody will be able to move anywhere because just because everybody is enjoying their own freedom. So it's completely chaos. Okay, so there has to be some kind of restrictions, either through laws or through some kind of social restrictions. So I'm writing it over here. So how limitations should be imposed, either. So let's discuss this. So let's take example of suppose you have your exam tomorrow, and what happened that people neighboring you know house, they started playing loud music. Okay, you won't be able to study. So this is a although this is this is completely unacceptable, then but we cannot give some kind of harsh punishment to this. So what kind of punishment we can give? We can give some kind of social disapproval, or social, we can say, condemnation. Okay, these things are not acceptable because everybody's children are studying, and it's not good for society. We can impose some social restriction. We cannot impose harsh punishment when any such kind of offense is happening. Okay, so, so this is an example of social restriction. So now let's take another example. Let's suppose that if any individual or any political leader, he ignites people. Let's say he gave some kind of communal speech, and that communal speech translated into some kind of violence, or you can say communal violence. Okay, and that led to killing of few innocent civilians. So it cannot be justified. Okay, students. So killing of innocent civilians can never be justified. So here we need to not only impose strict punishment, we have to require that more stricter and stricter punishment is required in such kind of offense. Okay, so what kind of offense should be there? Either through life imprisonment, or other kind of punishment that is very deterrent of nature. Okay, that is of a very deterrent nature. Okay, so we have discussed two examples, that what kind of punishment, what kind of restrictions should be imposed if any individual commits offense, such kind of offense. So here we can see why are constraints necessary. They are necessary to protect others' freedom. Okay, to maintain peace and order in society. There will be more peace and order if there is if everybody enjoys freedom in a very restrictive way, that others' freedom are not compromised. Prevent misuse of power and harm to others. It Freedom grows through discipline. Okay, freedom grows through discipline, not by removing all limits. Okay, so now let's discuss about negative liberty and positive liberty. Okay, so this is very interesting. So by negative liberty we means uh, it's a very, you can say, it's a very narrow definition of freedom. Okay, by negative liberty we means just removing restrictions. Okay, that is not sufficient. For instance, you have a freedom, or you have freedom to move anywhere in a country. Okay, that is a very negative freedom. You have just freedom. Okay, but what is positive freedom? What do we mean by positive freedom? By positive freedom means that you have state intervention is there, and you know for instance, suppose you are you can say you have freedom to move anywhere in the country. Okay, you have freedom to move anywhere in the country, and you have freedom to choose any profession you want. Okay, so will you be able to enjoy this freedom completely? No, until unless you don't have required skills, required educational qualifications, I don't think so you can enjoy this freedom to a full extent. Okay, because so positive freedom means it is not sufficient to give freedom to people. It is also important that they should have required skills, required educational opportunities, and educational and health intervention should be there by state, so that they have choices, they have choices to exercise that which profession should they choose. Okay, so this is called as positive freedom. Okay, this is the difference between negative liberty and positive liberty. Okay, so negative liberty is a very narrow definition, just removing restriction, and positive liberty is something beyond. Okay, uh, taking some extra steps to develop, in skills of individual and capacities of individuals, so that they can uh, enhance their skill and enhance their capacity to have better opportunities in life, so that they can enjoy their freedom in true way, the way they wanted. Okay, thing I forgot to discuss about. Uh, we Let's also discuss about harm principle. Okay, so let's also discuss about harm principle of Mill. So what do we mean by this harm principle? Now, J.S. Mill was a political philosopher. He believed that until unless any individual he does not interfere into life of somebody else, so he should be allowed, and state should have no business to stop that individual. Okay, so harm principle believed in, complete kind of giving freedom as long as he does not causes harm to society or any other individual. So this was harm principle of Yes Mill. So he gave two kind of distinction: self regarding action and others regarding action. Okay, he classified action of people into two categories, that is self regarding action and others regarding action. Okay, so uh, he gave his harm principle that so long as people are not causing any kind of uh, harm to anybody else, they should not be restricted in any way. Okay, so this was harm principle of J.S. Mill. Okay, so and what is others regarding action? When any action of individual is it causes some kind of harm, then it is others. It should be controlled, and it should be controlled by the state. Okay, now let's discuss about freedom of speech and expression, which was given by J.S. Mill. Okay, so J.S. Mill was very strong advocate of freedom of speech and expression, because he believed that truth will only come out when there is free discussion. When there is free discussion, even he strongly believed that even if anybody is having minority opinion, for instance, there are 50 people who are agreeing to something, and there are two people, they do not agree to that. So what he believed that in freedom of speech and expression, that minority opinion should also be respected, because he believed that the real truth will not come out until unless there is a debate, there is a discussion. So he was a strong advocate of freedom of speech and expression. So let's take example of Galileo. So let me tell you the time at which Galileo, he was a famous astronomer and scientist. So he lived in an era of 14th or 15th century. So what happened in the era in which he lived? There was complete dominance of church and monarchy at that time. So what happened if anybody said anything against church or king? So he was punished heavily. Okay, so at that time there was a feeling that it was not Earth which was revolving around the sun, but it was sun which was revolving around the Earth. But the Galileo, the famous scientist at that time, he exercised his intellectual freedom. He exercised his intellectual freedom, and he said, no, this is wrong. This is scientifically not true. And he said that it was Earth which was revolving around the sun, and he has to face several years of punishment by the state, by the church. But that was landmark which led to further advancements in science. So, so this is the reason why J.S. Mill, he was a strong advocate of freedom of speech and expression, and he believed that people should be allowed to express themselves freely. Only then they will, truth will be able to come out. Okay. So this was it for today, students. So thank you very much for joining me.